What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name is Adam. I'll be your host on today's Hobby Hotline. This is episode 294. We have two obviously wonderful co-hosts here. We've got Horatio and then we've got Uncle Rich Klein. Horatio, I'll start with you. How was your week? Do you have anything interesting that happened?
Good week. It's a rainy day out there. I'm a little under the weather, so I'm hoping I can perform today, like the flu game for Jordan. Like Jordan did. And but so if I have to cough or sneeze a little bit, my apologies.
Yeah, you know what? You know what? I'll quickly do this. You're forgiven, by the way. It's just in case you do cough or sneeze or anything. Rich, how are you doing this week?
I'm fine. In the last couple weeks, I've loaded 8 loads of donations into my office, and right now I'm just winding my way through it. They're in all sorts of boxes. If anybody ever wants 1991 Pro line, I may have the master supply of commons that you'll never want again. And yesterday, in a hobby thing, I went to my friend Ryan's store up in McKinney, about 15 minutes from here. He had a local radio show from the fan, KNC Masterpiece. And they have Mike Basic, who's a former major league pitcher. He gave up one of Barry Bonds' close, I think it was like one of 713, 714, somewhere around there. And they have another guy named, I believe, Kevin. They're both card collectors. And so they do remotes from the guy's store, and they break stuff while they're there, and they give away everything. And it's a cool experience. I'd never been to the store before. Finally, it aligned where I could go up to the store. My car actually could work. The first time I was supposed to go up there, my car got totaled. The Monday I was supposed to go up there. So it was like, and I'm sitting at a traffic light. I'm behind a crosswalk, and a pickup truck hits a lawnmower work truck with such force that it spins the lawnmower work truck into the front of my car with enough speed that detonated the airbag, thereby totaling my car.
Well, I mean, you were safe. You were all right in the long run. So
I still have some shoulder things that came out of that, but I mean, overall, I'll take that as a minor thing. That's a couple of years ago. But what I found most interesting, I stayed about an hour, is as they were breaking the first box, the guys, Mike and Kevin, who know the hobby, I see them both at the Dallas card shows when they're in town. They were talking about, we'll make sure we give away everything we break. And they actually name checked Backyard Breaks as somebody who didn't do that. I mean, I caught that. And I said, they're name checking Backyard Breaks as we're not giving away the stuff and we're not putting it on the side. If we pull it to give it away here, we're giving it away here.
Yeah.
So that was kind of nice.
Nice.
And,
yeah.
And as I said, with 2 of the 3 hosts knowing something about cards.
Right,
so
right,
they're
exactly.
At a card store, and they actually know something about cards, and they're actually collectors.
Definitely.
It's a good thing. It's a good way. And I would definitely recommend, if you know people wherever you are, if you know somebody who's a collector that's on the radio or on television or whatever, always reach out to them to see, can they give you publicity? And we talk about publicity, and I think that'll lead you into the first topic there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good. Nice transition there. So we've got first topic. I think I've talked about this on like almost every episode that I've been a host of for the past couple months. So, I mean, we're going to quickly go through this. I don't really necessarily know. My opinions on the card haven't really changed. I mean, my main opinion was that, I was seeing people say it was going to sell in the million. It didn't, clearly not close to that really. But in my opinion, I thought it was going to be somewhere in that, I guess it's kind of a large range, but the million or the 100,000 to a million, I didn't really know where it was going to fall in that range. And I think I remember saying that if it was closer to 100,000, that wouldn't be surprising. If it was a million, that also wouldn't be surprising. Horatio, I'll start off with you. What were your kind of thoughts on the sale? Like I said, we're going to kind of keep this topic a little bit shorter just because I think I know that on one of these episodes with Horatio, I think we talked about this. So we're going to kind of keep it quick with sort of what we think of this card, just sort of in general.
Yeah, I think it's still 114K is still a lot of money.
Right, exactly.
So it wasn't a million. That's still a lot of money. If you pull that card, you got 114K. You're probably pretty happy.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's really my thought. A couple of things, Bronny did have the heart issue, And I know that way back in the day, and you do recover faster. But I mean, in the 1970s, John Hiller suffered a heart attack. 2 years later, he's pitching for the Detroit Tigers and like is pitching seemingly every day. He wins 17 games, saves like 31 or something, loses 14. I mean, he's like involved in every game for the Tigers. And in the 60s, we had Dave the Rave Stallworth, and he was a New York Knick, and he suffered a heart attack in 1967, and he becomes a key bench player from the 69-70 Knicks. So I think, you do recover faster nowadays, but I think to get to the level where they want Bronny to be, it's probably he probably needs a second year in college.
Yeah.
Right now, from what I've read, he's projected, if they draft him, as a second round pick.
Right.
I did listen to your Hobby News Daily recap this week, which I always recommend to everybody on Saturday mornings. Is a great way to catch up on just some hobby topics of the week. It's 35, 40, 45 minutes, depending how long you talk each day. But it's a really congratulations that you do it every single day. And you're right. And I think you've nailed it, that it's probably one more year before he's really ready to take the next step. And it's always hard to be an NBA player. It's really hard to be an NBA player.
Right.
If it gets his dad, they may do that. But I think this is a lot of money. I saw the comment about 100. You posted about 100K too much. I don't think so. But I think somebody's very happy, and we'll leave it at that.
Definitely. Horatio, how about you? What are your kind of thoughts on this card?
Yeah, this had to go to a LeBron super collector. This was kind of a must-have for whoever is really into collecting LeBron. Especially since it's his first autograph. On a different for a different company in a while. Non-upper deck product. So, it's I think it's about right. I think that when we projected it, people were projecting at $1 million. It was a little too much, especially since Bronny, right? I mean, in some weird ways, Bronny's autograph, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting how this does over time. Like, does Bronny's autograph, increase the value of the card over time, or does it decrease the value of the card over time? And I think one of the big things is, like, what happens when there's more superfractors with both of these guys' autographs? What if Bronny and LeBron, both happen to play together in the NBA? That'd be awesome, right? And they make a card like that. And then what happens to the value of this card? But for the time being, all market conditions, being equal, I think it's about right. 100K. I know the guy that pulled it. I don't know the guy. The guy that pulled it was just somebody who went to an LCS and pulled it out of the pack. Good for them. Making 100K on a card is not a bad day.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely good to see that cards. I mean, we have cards selling in the hundreds of thousands. It seems like every week, and it's good to see that like a modern card is still pulling over 100K for the price of the card. I mean, I think we will get into another topic of the next topic is about a player that unfortunately we don't know what's going to happen with him, but it just overall, like, it's good to see modern cards, especially one from last year, selling in that 100K range. And I think there's definitely the argument to be made that, like, just because a card sells for something doesn't mean that it's good for the health of the hobby. But I mean, I don't know. I don't agree with that necessarily. I think this card definitely, I don't know. I mean, I think unfortunately it probably was affected a little bit by the fact that Bronny wasn't going to be playing in the NCAA tournament. I mean, the USC didn't make it, so I definitely think that would have, I mean, only would have been the first day for the NCAA tournament. So, like, that's probably why they were selling it when they did. Realistically, they were trying to sell it during the first couple days of the NCAA tournament. With Bronny not making it, I mean, like I said, even if USC had made it, Bronny hasn't really made as big of an impact this year on the team as probably that he would have hoped. Obviously, because of the health issue. And I mean, I think too, when you have a billionaire as a father, you probably get a little bit of a different health. Your healthcare is probably a little bit better, in my opinion. So, like, they're probably getting, I don't know, some sort of not experimental, but like some sort of treatment that's like, that's probably out of our insurance range. If that's one way to put it, I suppose. But yeah, like I said, I think with this card, it's going to be a good barometer to kind of see where the market is for modern cards. I didn't really have a super good read. I had a read that it was going to be over 100K. I didn't really know after that where it was going to go. I think it being in the 114, 114K. I think, like I said, I think that's good for the hobby in the sense that, like, we don't have to wonder what this card's value is. We have the value of the card, and I think having values of cards is much better than speculating on values of cards, in my opinion. And now, unfortunately, we are going to be shifting the story here.
Can I add one more comment?
Oh yeah, go for it, Rich.
Then we can go, because I see Rex has signed on, and we're on the big board. We're on the big screen at his stores, and we always appreciate that. And I want to point out what Horatio said. This card wasn't pulled by a breaker. This card was pulled at a store, similar to what Rex has. And so it's really good for LCSs to have cards like that pulled at their stores. So, Rex, I hope someday you get a card like that pulled at your stores too.
Right, totally. Absolutely. And yeah, so, I mean, unfortunately, we're going to be shifting to a story that I think is, going to affect sports cards. We don't necessarily know, I think, right now how it's going to affect cards. I haven't really seen anybody posting any like charts or anything from Ohtani prices like in the past couple days. I think the story in general is pretty wild and doesn't really make much sense. I don't know. I think that there was something nefarious going on here, in my opinion. I don't know if it's necessary, because people are getting into details and semantics on, like, hypothetically, if it was a gift, you have to pay taxes on the gift, and it's like, well, yeah, but like this Ohtani is almost a billionaire. I'm sure. I don't know. No one really knows what's actually going on here. MLB is doing an investigation. I've seen stuff that like this was part of some sort of FBI probe that had been 5 years long, and that like the bookie that was getting paid was like the son of one of like the original and New York City crime bosses. Like, it's really a story that has a lot. I mean, unfortunately, it has a lot of legs, and I don't think it's just going to be swept under the rug. Horatio, I'll kick it to you first. I don't really know even where we can start with this because it's so wild. But I'll just kick it to you for your first kind of initial thoughts on here, Horatio.
There's so much speculation, and I mean, this is like the hobby's version of Princess Kate. If I can say so. Where everyone's coming out with these crazy conspiracy theories about who's doing what, how they didn't know this, how they didn't know what, and then she comes out and says, I got cancer. And now everybody's
right.
like, has, egg on their face because, they're throwing all these crazy things out there. So until that comes out, until the some sort of truth comes out, and the speculation kind of dies down, I don't know. The only thing that I can the only comment I have really is like, I'm not a big fan of, I'm not a gambler. I mean, whatever, if you are a gambler, whatever, I'm not moralizing here, but it's just funny, like MLB has there's 5 MLB stadiums that have sports books in their stadiums, right? Including Fanatics opened one up in Cleveland. And I just find it ironic, the whole situation, like if Ohtani bet on games, if he bet on baseball, obviously you don't want athletes doing that, right? Obviously there's a conflict of interest there, but MLB doesn't have a leg to stand on, right? In terms of like trying to punish this guy, because you're letting the sports books into your house, and I get it's one thing for fans to gamble, it's another thing for athletes to gamble, but I'm of the opinion that it shouldn't be in stadiums at all. And and until that happens, then I'm just kind of looking at it cynically. As far as Ohtani goes, I hope that he gets cleared. I hope that it's true that he basically just got defrauded by his interpreter, and because Ohtani's a great player. He's great for baseball. He's great for the game internationally, and he's a future Hall of Famer if he just continues doing that. And so I can't not cheer for him, and I just hope that it doesn't affect his transition in LA.
Rich, I'll same question to you. I mean, actually, maybe a little bit of a different question. So when the news happened about Pete Rose, about him gambling and stuff like that, I'm sure that there probably wasn't the market in general for sports cards probably wasn't as reactionary as it is today, just because it wasn't as easy to sell cards when probably that news broke. But
actually, that was during the peak of the first overproduction era, so it actually was very easy to sell cards in 1989.
Well, I mean, like you have to, like, you couldn't just sell them on eBay. Like,
that's true. There was no eBay. I mean, but there were tons of stores.
Right, exactly.
Beckett was 2 years away from having 30,000 different card stores accounts. I think they were on the uptick on that. They were probably at 15,000 card stores at that point.
So I guess so 1 sec. The question that I have for you actually is, and we can get your thoughts on it just in general, but like when this happened to Pete Rose, was there like a massive shift within the card industry when Pete Rose got in trouble, like back when he originally got in trouble for gambling? Do you remember anything happening like that?
Yeah, there's one major difference. Yes, there was a bit of a shift downward on some of his cards, but the thing was, Pete Rose was a manager at that point. He'd already have his 4,256 hits. He had his Hall of Fame career in the bag, so to speak. It cost him his Hall of Fame. It cost him being in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
I mean, I still think you can almost separate the two, but I agree at the time with the suspension, because he didn't, even though he never bet against the Reds, he didn't bet on the Reds in every single game. So you have the Reds. Let's say he bets on the Reds in 100 games to win, and he doesn't bet on them in the other 62 games. Yeah. If you're a bookie, you know he's not betting on his team to win those games.
Yeah, he's pretty much betting against them.
Manage differently. You know he thinks he has a pretty good shot of losing that game.
Right, exactly.
Offload and you bet against the Reds. Right. Which is why I agree with the suspension. It's what it is. As I said, his cards did have a downward. He got cold, but the value never really collapsed the same way Ohtani's might if it's discovered. He's involved in any way because Ohtani doesn't have the Hall of Fame resume yet. He only has like 5 years in the major leagues, and you have to be there for 10. And they're not going to count yet the Japanese time he spent to get him into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Right.
And the other issue is that gambling is illegal in California, which is why this is done. So whatever he's involved with in California is not legal. This is not like, Horatio talked about Cleveland and Fanatics. It's legal in Ohio, obviously. It's not legal in California.
Yeah, and that's why they had to get the bookie involved.
And that's why the bookie's involved. And
which, again, sorry. I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead on my thoughts kind of after this.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No.
Well, I mean, look, I think that sports gambling right now is way too easy. It's way too accessible. It's way too easy. And I hate to be like the old man yelling at the cloud here, but it's like gambling is one of the most not to sound like an old man yelling at the cloud. Gambling is one of the most deadly addictions of them all. Like it's an addiction. It becomes addicting. So it's like, for this to happen doesn't surprise me if he was gambling. Like I know, I don't know. I know friends that gamble a lot, and I'm a gambler more in the sense that like I like looking at the spreads and betting on my unit is very small compared to like a lot of my friends. Like they make fun of me actually because I'll say I bet on a game. They're like, oh, what did you win? Like $5? I'm like, well, yeah, I won $5. But it's like the fact that you can just open up your phone in some states and go and spend money. It's just I think in a few years they're going to revert back with the sports gambling on mobile on phones, because I think there's one thing, if you have to get in your car and go somewhere to gamble, that's one thing. But if you can just go to your phone and you live in one of these states, and even if you don't, honestly, you can just go to a European website. Like it's not like you can just access European websites that have like sports betting. So either way, it's accessible on everyone's phones. So I don't know. And it's the same with like ESPN Bet. Like, ESPN bought the ESPN, I think they bought the company that was running the Barstool Sportsbook. And so like now it's like what's supposed to be the company that has the most sports information is now running a sports book. Like that just doesn't seem ethical to me. Like that doesn't seem like that makes much sense in terms of for a consumer. And and sorry, I'll get off my high horse here when it comes to gambling. That's not to say I like to gamble. Like I gamble occasionally. I'm not like doing it every day. I mean, like I said, I like with the NCAA tournament, maybe I bet on a couple games during the NCAA tournament. But it's an addiction that I think a lot of people don't see as an addiction because every other commercial is, bet $5 and get $200 back. It's like, yeah, but then what happens when that $200 is gone? Because even the best gamblers in the world are only winning at 52% of the time. So it's like, think about, and they have the information where it's like, they know, like the people who are the professionals, they know who seeds the grass. And then they know that if that person was sick that week, that might affect some sort of spread. Like they have this type of information. That's not type of information that regular people have. So Vegas always wins. Let's just put it that way. And I think this is maybe another example of, not Vegas necessarily, but the house always winning here is I hope that Ohtani wasn't betting on games. I hope that it is just like his interpreter was betting on games and saying, because I don't know. There's so many different stories here, and it's really just, it's all not good, I think. And within cards, I think Ohtani, I'm hoping that it turns out that it was actually just a misunderstanding and all of these things. But I do think that down the road, I don't know, hopefully that there isn't anything else that pops up with gambling with Ohtani, because I think that might hurt his cards. I think that overall, Ohtani is one of the best. He's probably in the top 5 players in the league right now, and he has been for a few years. And if he can continue this streak, he'll be a Hall of Famer for sure. Like if he wins a title with the Dodgers, I think that for sure helps. But I think, I don't know. And when it comes to the gambling addiction, it's like, I'm sure that the interpreter was lying. I'm sure he's lied somewhere along the way, whether he was lying to Ohtani, whether he was lying in the investigation. It's like when you have these types of addictions, you don't, you don't think straight, I guess is one way to put it. And this is just based on, seeing all different types of articles about addiction and stuff like that. So, you don't think straight. You don't think that like, oh, maybe, if the story comes out that Ohtani, he was using Ohtani's name as like when you go to a casino and they give you like a chip that says you owe X amount of dollars, like maybe he was doing that with Ohtani's name or something like that. So I don't know. I'm hoping that nothing comes of it and that this is just something where it's a misunderstanding and, Ohtani can play this season, because I think that this Dodgers team is going to be insane. Like it's going to be a very fun team to watch. And I don't know, it coming out when they were in Japan, I definitely think is interesting. The Million Cubs is saying, go get some oxygen. I'm going to pass out. Yeah, I think I will pass it on here. So, sorry. I don't know. Sometimes this just happens. I thought I was hosting Hobby News Daily. That's my mistake. That's on me.
Adam, that's okay. Passion is always acceptable.
Yeah. So we'll continue with this topic. We'll get a couple more thoughts in here. So Rich, I'll kick it back to you.
There are a couple things to say. One, you're right about the gambling on the phone, but the leagues all need to set it. With the way things are changing, the leagues have not done and the players' associations have not done a good job of making adjustments. You see these football players getting suspended for betting on baseball games because they placed the bet while they were in their team's facility. I mean, they're not betting on baseball. Granted, we can talk about, they're not betting on football, but still, we need to have really detailed rules. This needs to be done. This is not a collective bargaining issue. This is one that needs to be fixed by all the things immediately. And this is one where you don't wait 3 years for the next collective bargaining or 8 years. You make the adjustment now.
Right.
And the other thing I want to say is that I saw a couple of Rex's comments and all that, is that part of me does not want any suspension, just because so many people have invested so much money in Ohtani. He's been a golden goose. It won't have a permanent effect. Somebody else will become a hero.
Right.
But it definitely would not be good. Plus, it's not good internationally. Right now, even though he got hammered in the first inning, in the game in Korea, the Dodgers have very expensive players from Japan. They'll all be up at 5 a.m. watching the Dodgers games.
Right.
Those games are off the charts in how many people watch them. So it behooves, as you said, Major League Baseball to get everything done. And if something bad did happen with Ohtani and it's his fault, then he does need to be dealt with. And we don't need another PR disaster. And we started by talking about Kate Middleton. Kensington King Charles. He was Prince Charles for all my life. I couldn't get used to calling him King Charles. But King Charles, the minute he realized he had a cancer diagnosis, announced it. One of the things that happened with Kate Middleton, they waited months, and there were no public appearances. And people follow the royals, and we all want Kate Middleton to get well real quickly. Don't get me wrong. We all want her to, just like Bronny. They have a lot of resources to be restored to full health. If you tell the truth and you get it out first and you get it out correctly, you've solved the Rubik's Cube. Well, everybody on this has failed the Rubik's Cube of PR.
Right. Yeah. And then, so Horatio, with you, I mean, it's obviously not the same thing as, Wander Franco, but like, in your lifetime, have you ever really seen two players? And I guess maybe it's a sports card bias because Wander Franco, everybody within sports cards knew about him. Probably the casual fan may not have known about him, but everybody within sports cards knew about him for 3 or 4 years before he got to the majors. Do you think that a similar thing could happen to Ohtani's cards if, like, I mean, worst case scenario is he was betting and he gets in trouble for doing something like that. Do you think that could happen with Ohtani's cards, like similarly what's happened with Wander Franco's cards? Obviously, two completely different situations, but like, do you think that they might have similar effects on the cards?
Yeah, I mean, Franco's cards are down to 0 now. I mean, basically,
yeah.
You could get a $2,000 Franco card a years ago or a year ago. You can get it for like $15-20. Ohtani, it depends on what actually happens. And I think, I just want to echo what Rich said. I 100% agree. Like, the PR is so important. The way you communicate to the public is so important. To the media is so important. And so far it's just been a bunch of lies, but it's not from Shohei, right? Ohtani hasn't said anything. Right. It's just been spokespeople. It's been his interpreter having this weird interview with ESPN. And then he goes back and says, I lied all about it. And then says, I accept full responsibility. Just the whole situation is bizarre. And then, so yeah, I mean, if Shohei is found to have bet on baseball, I mean, for sure, the prices are going to tumble. I can't remember the biggest gambling kind of, and I wasn't old enough to be aware of the hobby at that point with cards, was with Michael Jordan, when it was found, like, before he was playing the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals, they come out with his gambling debts and all that stuff, and you have to come out publicly and talk about his gambling, habits. That took a hit on his reputation for a couple months, and I think the same thing has happened to Shohei. I think he'll eventually. I don't know. Again, I don't know his involvement. All I can go is by what we know, which is that he was oblivious to the whole thing. Is there a cover up? I have no clue. But if he had nothing to do with it, regardless, because he's associated with it, he's going to take a hit for a couple months. But I could see him in 2-3 months down the line. The Dodgers are cruising. He wins a title, let's say. Everybody forgets about it. I mean, that would be my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a blip on the radar. I think, like, if the investigation comes out and they find that it really was just Ohtani's interpreter betting, using a bookie, using Ohtani's name as being like, no, I'm good for the money. Like, don't worry about the money. Like, I've got it. Like, don't worry about it. Ohtani's got me. Where he maybe didn't even have a conversation with Ohtani, and he's just using his name as like a, like I said, a marker, like you'd get at a casino. And then however it gets up to $4 million. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I've gambled a little bit, but I've never gotten to a point where, you owe someone money. Like, it's pretty much just been like, I'll put money into the account, and then, worst case scenario is you lose the $20 or $30 that I put in. But like, when you're addicted to something as dangerous as gambling, sorry, I just went into that. I'm not going to get into it again because then I'll go on another 10-minute rant here. Rich, I'll just kick it to you one last time here for your final thoughts on this topic, and then we'll move on to, the next couple topics that we've got lined up for the show.
And I'll just leave you all with this. One of my favorite parts of this was when ESPN went to Jeff Pass, and I did not see this. They said he was reporting from some ESPN Sportsbook. It was like the most.
Yeah.
It was the funniest thing. Like, okay. We're talking about a gambling story with our number one baseball writer and analyst, and he's at a sports book.
Right. Yeah.
We own.
It's
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the interrelationship is definitely a problem with gambling and sports. And that's why I'm saying everybody needs to fix it now, not wait for collective bargaining. I think the NFL's next collective bargaining could be 6 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
This needs to be fixed before 6 years down the road.
Right,
Or
totally.
baseball, 5 years, and basketball, whatever. This needs to be fixed now so everybody knows. And remember, this is happening. Rudy Gobert got suspended in the NBA for making like a money sign where he thought referees might be on the take.
Right.
And there have been NBA referees in the past who have done that. So, it's happening in all the sports.
Right, definitely. Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't foresee in the future, honestly, gambling being as easy as it is. Like, nowadays you can go and you can buy the Mega Millions on your phone and stuff like that. It just doesn't seem like. I think I saw a funny video that was something along the lines of, it was like POV, you're one of the CEOs at the sports gambling companies, and the guy is like, wait, you're saying that people are giving us all of their money? And it's just like, yeah, maybe I butchered sort of the joke there, but it was like, this gambling CEOs are really just, they don't really care necessarily that unfortunately that it's an addiction, and sure, it's maybe fun if you're winning, but when you're losing, things can get pretty bleak. Now, moving on to a story that not really baseball related. I suppose that's one way to transition here. It appears that Victor Wembanyama, is going to have multiple cards within this year's Topps Dynasty, including this card that Topps actually tweeted out with a dual auto patch with Aaron Judge. And I mean, I think it's fine. I don't know. I don't know. It's very, I have very mixed emotions on it. So, I'll do, Rich, I'll start with you here first. Like, what are kind of your thoughts on including Wembanyama in baseball products, or just in general?
As you talked about on your Hobby News Daily things, there have been some legitimate crossovers. Allen and Ginter has had a lot of very legitimate crossovers. And so I don't have such a big problem with that, but I think I think you should put it into a product where you have a legitimate crossover history. Because how have Wembanyama and Judge ever met? I mean,
right.
They're if they were rookies together, I'd say, okay, we got two big rookies. They're not.
Right.
I mean, what are you going to say? They're both tall for their sports. And
right.
and I say that kiddingly, but seriously, Judge is what, 6'7", 2 whatever. Wembanyama's over 7 feet. He had another great game last night, by the way. And what is the correlation with these two people? And that's really the one question I have. What is the correlation? You want to get his signature in? Find a hot shot baseball rookie or a hot shot baseball young prospect from last year. Put him on with Evan Carter of the Rangers, who had a great World Series, is still a rookie. You've got him under contract. At least then you can say young superstars. Aaron Judge is over 30. He's not a young superstar anymore either.
Rich, he because Wembanyama, he threw out a first pitch at a Yankees game last year.
Fine.
Yeah, that's
fine. I mean, that's well and good. But again, how does that really correlate to these two people being related on a card?
So you're saying it was at the Yankees game is when he threw out the first pitch? I remember he threw out the first pitch. I actually forgot where it was.
But I still say, what's the relationship with these two people on the same card? Now, if it was the two of them together, posed together, then you can say, okay, they're posed together.
Yeah.
Then you get them both to sign. That, I would say, that's a more legitimate way of doing it.
Right.
Fair.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting card. Horatio, I'll kick it to you. What are your kind of initial thoughts on this card?
So not this card. Do you have Adam? Do you have a picture of the other card by any chance?
Oh yeah, let me as you're talking, I'll look it up really quickly.
Cool. So the other card I love. It's a Rich. It's a super fractor. It's a 1 of 1. Let me take it back. It's not super. It's a 1 of 1. And it's actually a really interesting card because when Wembanyama draws like a little alien with a spaceship on it, and it's a 1 of 1. And alien is what he was given that nickname by LeBron. And I'm in the minority, it seems like here, but I love it. I think it's like it adds value to the card. I think it's fun. I think it's different. and it's kind of, it's just a little bit different from what we've seen. You could have your standard one of one card and be happy with it. But why not have fun with it? And this also to me shows that there's a different demographic that they're appealing to. They're appealing to younger fans,
Mhm.
where not necessarily the traditionalists. Where even I consider myself more of a traditionalist. I find the card fun. Um, the only issue I have with the card is that those patches for Wembanyama, they're supposed to have come from when he threw out the first pitch. So there's the card. There's the card. Um, and it says at the bottom, it says Topps certified autograph and event worn memorabilia, which is fine. It's event worn memorabilia. Um, and they have the tag from the jersey. It's supposed to be from the jersey that he wore when he threw out that first pitch at Yankee Stadium.
Mm.
Um, and it's from this company called Ebbets Field Flannels. And so what's interesting there is that Ebbets Field Flannels is owned by a company that has a minority stake in Lids,
Hmm.
and Lids, of course, is owned by Fanatics.
Mm.
So you see, like, this is almost like a marketing piece where Fanatics is throwing in their merchandise, right, and merging it in with the card, which I think is really interesting. But the problem I have with the card is that on the back, Tops doesn't fully go. Like, is that tag really from that jersey? Because in the back they use their standard. The relic in this card is not from any specific event.
Right.
Da, da, da. I don't know the specific wording, but they don't actually authenticate the tag, and I don't understand why, if that tag is supposed to be from the jersey that he wore when he threw out the first pitch.
Right.
Um, and I
Yeah,
think
it looks
that's
like on the other it looks like on the other card it does say game used, but I mean
yeah,
this is just a rendering of the card, so it's not necessarily what the card is gonna 100% look like, but at least from the rendering that Topps tweeted out, it looks like it says game used right there. So
on that card.
game, yeah, the other one I don't think it said game used, or maybe on the back it said it, but on this one it does say game used. So I'm assuming that means that it's game well first pitch used. I don't know. I mean, because he
Yeah,
hadn't played in the game, but um,
it
I
says
don't.
yeah. Sorry, Adam. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I don't know. I mean, I think if you sign Wembanyama to uh this massive deal with his autographs, you have to get your money's worth is one thing that I'm thinking. Like, I wonder if we're gonna see more. Like Wembanyama probably the biggest name of all of the exclusive names that they've signed this year for Tops at least. They did get those top quarterbacks, which those top quarterbacks within the NFL, they didn't have many autographs within products. So like I don't know if Tops has some sort of multi-sport thing on the pipeline. I mean, we've seen, Tops finest basketball with a lot of like legends. So I don't know what their ultimate goal is for this next couple of years when they have the exclusives, which I mean, I also would wonder how much an exclusive drops in value after the rookie year of the player. Like if the Bryce Young, Will Levis, CJ Stroud, the market value of those autographs from not a rookie year, how much those are going to drop. And again, like also,
Mhm.
for Tops and Fanatics, they probably don't really care that much about what the value of the cards are. They're looking for the value from people who are buying them, like the distributors and the hobby shops. And for them, and I think this is maybe what happened with some Panini products potentially, is they said, well, we have X amount of people who have already prepaid for this product because they're on some sort of contract. We're just going to, make a ton of it and keep selling it to people. And, I don't know if this is what's going to happen with Tops where they have some of these autographs and they have to figure out how to put them into the product. But, I don't know. I'm 50-50 on if I think this is a good use of the Wembanyama autograph. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know how they have to use the autograph because they paid for it, but I don't know any other way that they could really use it other than coming out with, unlicensed basketball, which I don't think they haven't said they're going to do that really, but like they have come out with, there was some Wembanyama Tops Now cards that I believe that I saw that were unlicensed that I thought were kind of interesting. Let's see. Let me see if I can find them. I'll kick it to you, Rich. Do you have any other thoughts on
While
this
you're
card as I'm
searching,
looking?
I do want to go back to one point Horatio brought up, and what it was the fun of doing different things on an autograph, like the alien drawing. Benny Montgomery, I believe he's a Rockies prospect. He would do various things
Yes.
like Benny and the Jets on some of his cards. He had other things, and the more players that are innovative, and granted, when you're signing the names, you don't always think about being innovative, but the more players that can think outside the box and do innovative things while they're doing their signing, the better it is for all concerned. Well, to go on a totally off the tangent thing, I was shocked when I looked at the Beckett OPG and I saw the prices for like the 1984 Fleer Glenn Hubbard card, the one with the snake, and probably the 88 Tim Flannery card with the surfboard, and the Mickey Hatcher with the big glove. Those cards are iconic because they're different. The signatures that are different, I suspect, long down the road are going to be iconic as well.
Right. Yeah, and these were actually the cards that I was just talking about. So the Tops Now, it's a Wembanyama, David Robinson. I mean, I think that they're actually one thing that I do want to give the designers at Tops and Fanatics some credit is like they have done a really good job at coming out with, you know, non-licensed cards, but actually making them look pretty good. Like, I think one of the things that Panini has tried to do is the unlicensed stuff with baseball. And I don't know if they're really, I was actually just about to say hitting it out of the park. But then I stopped myself because, I guess pun intended, pun unintended. I don't know necessarily which one it was, but yeah. So I think with Tops this year, they did this with CJ Stroud as well. Fanatics used a designer named Tyson Beck, who's one of my favorite sports designers. That's just how I know his name off the top of my head. And I don't know if he worked on these ones as well. But one thing that Fanatics did a good job with this year was using the CJ Stroud autographs within Tops Now products and a couple other random print on demand CJ Stroud cards. But they did a good job with the photoshopping of the jersey. Like, they used an image that was like his face is more facing the camera, not like to the side where you could see the like logo, and then the jersey is kind of cut from like the middle of the chest up, so you can't really see the logos. Similar to I mean, this is obviously let's see, it's similar to like this style here, and then this one, obviously, they put the Eiffel Tower in front of me, and that's probably more or less just used for distraction away from the photoshopping of the jersey, but there are probably going to be autographs with here. I mean, you can see even in here where there's probably going to be a sticker purposely designed so that way they can put the sticker here above his name. But yeah, so I think these are sort of what Tops has done and what they probably will do throughout this year still with, Wembanyama still being in his rookie year. Now we're going to switch over to the last, two topics of the show. I think that they're kind of similar. First, we're going to start with the PSA. PSA and Fanatics are doing a partnership here where the annual fee of the Collectors Club, the standard membership, is going up $50. And then if you have the standard membership, you're going to get $60 in Fanatics credit on Fanatics Live. I guess a premium, you're getting $125. I suppose this is, it makes sense. Like you're adding an extra $10 in value to it. It kind of seems like you're adding. So in my opinion, it seems like they're adding something that no one asked for. And that's really my only problem with this is like, it seems like, if you're part of the Collectors Club for PSA, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're buying cards on Fanatics Live. So like the fact that they're upping that you're getting $60 in Fanatics credit is nice, but the fact that they're upping the price of the Collectors Club membership, like I said, I don't know. I don't know if people were clamoring for this. I mean, Horatio, I'll start with you here. What are kind of your overall thoughts on this partnership with PSA and Fanatics Live? Do you think it's going to be successful? Do you think we're going to see a decrease in the price? Like, what are kind of your overall thoughts to start out here?
Two quick thoughts. I mean, my Uh, I wonder what PSA. I mean, and maybe it's not obvious to me, but it seems like Fanatics gets more of a better end of the deal here. Because like what PSA is doing is raising the prices. Obviously, it's $50. Okay, still people don't like having prices raised on them, right? Um, so PSA is doing that, and it's just drawing more kind of attention, more people toward the Fanatics Live platform. That's my first thought. So I'm wondering how PSA kind of you know gains from this,
Right.
more so than maybe Fanatics. And then the second thing is just Fanatics. Again, like man, they're everywhere. Like we talked about the Bronny card. We're talking about sports books. We're talking about Wembanyama and unlicensed products, and we're talking about now PSA forming a partnership with Fanatics. Like it's here, right? Like the Fanatics takeover is here. It's in full force, and we might just be in the third inning of it. So
Mm,
those are my thoughts on it. I don't know what more. I mean, I don't know how PSA members feel about it. I personally just submit my cards to my LCS,
mm,
and that's about it.
yeah.
Well,
Rich, same question to you.
I wish we had hobby hotline host King NASCAR Logan Ward here to talk about this one.
Mm,
Logan, if you happen to be listening, call in because I would love to get your opinion. But my opinion, my comments are slightly different. My first comment is Nat Turner is a numbers guy.
mm-hmm,
He's a data guy. With everything else, he's still a numbers and a data guy. And I'm wondering how many members of the PSA Collectors Club are more like Logan that would just send in cards so they could get, a few free cards each year. They could get some of the benefits.
mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily break a lot of profit. Logan does racing. It's not like there's a lot of racing breaks you have to do,
Right.
unlike some of the other sports. I wonder what percentage of the people in the PSA club also break. If it's a high percent, then this makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're going to give breaking credit, you might as well give breaking credit to somebody that already has, we'll call safeguards in place. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody pulls, well, we talked about with backyard breaks earlier, and doesn't give a card that they pull to the rightful person, that person won't be on Fanatics Live anymore.
Mm.
So there is some backup to being with Fanatics Live and the breakers
Right.
on Fanatics Live that have to go through I'll call it a gestation period, but whatever the term you want to use is to be approved to be on Fanatics Live. You just don't say, I want to, Rich Klein can't just call and say, I want to be on Fanatics Live tomorrow and we'll be on Fanatics Live.
Mm.
I have
Right.
to do all sorts of things to prove that I'm worthy. So there is a BTE, a barrier to entry for Fanatics Live. So if you're going to do that, that's good. And I also found interesting, and I forgot what card it was from whatever bounty, because there seems to be one every week. But there was one, or maybe some product. Yes, you can send this card to Beckett, CGC or CSG or whatever they're calling themselves nowadays, and SGC. And the only one listed that they couldn't send it to was PSA. So it's also on a global hobby term significant that now Fanatics is working out some deal with some part. Collectors and Fanatics are working out some part of some deal to work together on something. So on a global hobby level, that's important too.
Right. And yeah, you were mentioning Nat Turner being a numbers guy. The numbers aren't adding up here. Like the $60 in Fanatics credit and the $50 increase in the Collectors Club membership. I'm hoping that this isn't just like a bait and switch type of situation, like where they're going to increase the price and then eventually they're going to decrease the price of Fanatics credit. Like if hypothetically, I'm hoping that they. I just don't know. As someone who has viewed the hobby as um understanding that the companies they want to make money here. They're not going to do anything that's going to not make money. The $10 difference here does make me wonder where, like, who's the money, like where's the money going, like who's making money here, like, because it just doesn't make much sense. PSA probably, because I would say I don't know what the percentage of people who are going to be paying the extra $50 and then not use the credit. But I would say that's probably what they're looking at and saying that they're thinking that, like, yes, we'll raise the price and we'll get 100% of the people who are paying for Collectors Club. They're unfortunately going to have to pay $50 more. But if only 50% of the people are using that $60 in the Fanatics credit, which like I said, those are just numbers I'm making up. I don't know what the percentages actually are. That's probably a win for PSA. And I don't know Fanatics Live. I mean, it's again, Fanatics Live is, in my opinion, it's a similar way of gambling where, even if you get that 50% of people who jump in, maybe there's 10% of the people who become, Fanatics Live Platinum members or something like that, where they spend a lot of money on the platform. And maybe that's what this partnership is for. Potentially they're trying to get more people to use Fanatics Live, and they're thinking, well, we'll get 10% of the people or whatever it is. I think that there's a trickle down effect of where this money comes in and where it goes. And like I said, just from first glance of it, it doesn't make sense. But then after you start kind of diving into a little bit more, I think it does. I think the numbers make sense, and why they use specific numbers makes a little bit of sense, in my opinion. And yeah, I mean, I think we're going to kick it to our last topic, which is also about grading. I just want to see, Horatio, Rich, do you guys have any last thoughts on this topic before we move on to our last
No,
topic?
no.
Of the
As
show?
I said, I've said what I wanted to say on this, but it's just interesting,
Yeah.
and I'd love to hear. And I seriously would love to hear Logan's comments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just
Horatio,
think that
anything else?
there's going to be another announcement from Fanatics now. I think this is the first kind of announcement from PSA, and I think we're going to have a reciprocal one from Fanatics where any certain cards you pull from our breaks, you could submit to PSA for
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And so I could see how that would work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And so we'll wrap the show up today with one last topic. So other big news this week was CGC announced that they're going to be was this announced that they're acquiring JSA. So I mean, I don't they're two smaller companies. We're not looking at like PSA, but Rich, I'll kick it to you. I think you may have worked for JSA, or you worked in tandem with people at JSA in the past as well.
I've done all sorts of things, but I will say Jimmy's posted on Facebook all about it. He's very happy with the deal. He's about my age. He's probably, his son is going to take over a lot of day-to-day duties. He has a contract basically like a lot of people like a lot of upper management people do when they sell a company, to be with the new company for a few years. He's also completed the grand sweep. He's worked with Beckett. He's worked with PSA DNA. He's worked with SGC. Their offices used to be real near each other in Parsippany, New Jersey. This completes the cycle for James Spence. Mm-hmm. And I say that kiddingly, but in all seriousness, he's very happy. He's happy. And that's really what counts. He thinks he did the best deal for him and his employees. Right. And that's what counts. And there's a lot of former Beckett people at CCG. Not a ton, not as many as in some places, but there's not my generation of Beckett people, but the generation after me. And there's a significant number. Mm-hmm. So it's a natural fit in a lot of ways. And again, it's part of what we harp upon on this show is hobby consolidation.
Yep.
As the hobby continues to consolidate, this is just another step along the way.
Right. Horatio, how about you? What were your kind of initial thoughts when you saw this news this past week?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I almost feel like they had to make a move, right? With PSA sort of in the midst of acquiring SGC, and we don't know, if that's gone through yet or, completely officially. It seems like they have to kind of make the move. I know that they're also expanding their offices in Asia. They got a pretty major presence there, and they're looking to grow that market as well. In terms of like the card side of it, I really like CGC. I think all the interactions I've had with people that work there have been great. Andy Broom has always been a great resource, a great source of information for me. Mm-hmm. When I'm just doing some research, writing some articles, things like that. And in some ways, I feel a little bit. I'll be honest. I'll feel a little bit better about JSA. Like I don't know that these authentication services, I know that they have a good reputation. I just feel like sometimes I guess the way in which they go about authenticating things isn't maybe 100% the way maybe I would imagine it to be. And it being under CGC, maybe they can streamline some things. Maybe they can add a couple more resources there. I like this ad for CGC. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it strengthens them as an authenticator.
Definitely.
So that's how I feel
Horatio,
about it.
just so you know, JSA has a scan of all the exemplars they've ever gotten in. If I give JSA an autograph to look up, I mean, sometimes they know instinctively it's good. I mean, if they're sitting next and witnessing at a show, that's a gimme. But I can give them an autograph, and they can actually compare it to their files. Does it match?
Okay.
And granted, not everybody has exemplars. There's a kidding story Dr. Beckett tells, because he took one of I had Topps cards made for the '92 National, and I signed most of them. I still have a few left,
Mhm.
and Beckett didn't have any exemplars. And they said, and this isn't JSA. JSA would have said the same thing. So I want that clear. Is this your, they said, we don't have any exemplars. And they go, do you want Rich to drive the 5 minutes to the office to verify he signed it? But, they really didn't want to do it because they didn't have an exemplar. It's hard for JSA to do the same thing. They really don't want to verify unless they can have an exemplar. And if they don't have an exemplar, they will try to research it, especially if it's an expensive item. Obviously, there's always going to be a first autograph they get of somebody new. And sometimes if it's a certified autograph card, you just hope for the best, that it really was signed by the player. But for the most part, they really try to match to what they already have. And there's always new people. So there is that. In fact, again, I'm going to pick on Beckett for a second here. And I know this isn't related to JSA, but there's a young kid I know. He's mid-20s at JSA. And one of the local dealers also submitted a signed card to Beckett Authentication Services. And he asked me if it was my signature. And I teased. I said, yes, it's my signature. I had some fun with it. And I said, no, it's really mine. I had a little fun with it. But that's what companies should do. They should do above and beyond research when they get the first couple signatures. After that, then they have exemplars. JSA has, so trying to complete the circle, even though I haven't mentioned there was a JSA example, they have exemplars. And as long as they have the exemplar, do people make mistakes? Yes. And I know you referred to that when we were in the green room, Horatio. But the point was, human beings still make mistakes. And you can get fooled. And with AI, it's probably going to get a little bit worse. But it's definitely something that they do their best to avoid. And that's all we can ask for.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, like you said, once because we did have that issue with PSA, which we haven't really heard much about, is like the Anthony Richardson autographs potentially being not real. Like we still haven't really heard. I mean, maybe it's just I haven't heard, and maybe it is a thing that people have heard. But in my opinion, I haven't heard anything about those Anthony Richardson autographs. So it's like, mistakes are, in an industry where so many different products are made and there's so many different options for, to send your products places, all of these things. I think that's what ends up happening is, mistakes unfortunately do end up getting made. As we've grown and as sort of the base of people collecting and base of people do in cards has grown, the companies have also grown. But then unfortunately, as we've seen a little bit of a drop off over the last year or so, the increases that were made in the pandemic years, like in the 2020, 2021, 2022, there just has to be a little bit of a balancing act here where, you brought in a bunch of people potentially, and unfortunately the business hasn't been doing as well over the past few years. I don't know, it's kind of, I hope that the consolidating there goes well. I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming it is. Rich, James, so hopefully, he's going to take care of everybody there and all that kind of stuff. But I think the consolidation is what we're going to see over the next few years with different companies. And we actually are coming up on the top of the hour here. I think we just hit the top of the hour. I'm going to kind of wrap the show up here. Horatio, I'll throw it to you. Any final thoughts for the show? Anything you want to let the people know? Any shout outs, anything like that?
No, just enjoy your weekend, guys. Thank you for having me on again, Hobby Hotline, and that's about it.
Rich, same question for you.
Well, as always, we always tell enjoy what you do. If you do something hobby wise, that's great this weekend. If not, that's okay too. We appreciate you spending your time with us, and I want to give a shout out to Hobby News Daily, where you do that daily
Mm.
podcast for, because 1 week from tonight, we there will be the special 1 year extended webcast. I believe it's from 5 to 9 Central, 6 to 10 Eastern, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, where a bunch of us will do various shifts and just talk about hobby topics. Unlike this, we may not be talking about the hottest hobby topics.
Hmm.
It could just be a chat. But it's getting anything done for a year. A year becomes a demarcation point for any new business. So a lot of times, if you can survive the first year, you go for several more years. So surviving 1 year of Hobby News Daily is quite an accomplishment. And Adam, you're part in that, doing every day, just trucking along with your 8 to 10 minutes of passion. And you need to do a gambling passion episode this week,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
or
yeah.
just copy,
Clearly,
or just copy and paste your little rant from today and just
yeah,
make that the episode.
yeah.
Take
Clearly a
yourself a
nerve.
morning off.
Clearly a nerve has been poked there or something like that.
Yeah, so you
Um,
need to do that. So,
yeah, yeah, and
so
I mean, my shout out's similar to Rich's Hobby News Daily. I mean, coming up on a year. I think April 1st of last year was when we launched it. Myself, and Mike Jokum, who was one of the original hosts on that show, really helped pave the way for what the show is today. So definitely want to give a shout out to him, and then obviously shout out to Danny as well for filling in on some of the shows and just obviously running Hobby News Daily the way that he has. Giving me the outlet to really kind of spread my wings and fly, I suppose. And I mean, the other thing that I always say on these episodes is, we've got tons of new people coming in into sports cards. Just make sure that you're nice to those people. I mean, being nice to people in general, I think maybe not just new people within sports cards, but just being nice in general, I think is definitely the way you should be going about your life. So, people coming in, they're going to have questions, help them out. They're in a similar situation to where maybe you were at some point in your sports card journey. So next week we will be back here, I believe, on Bench Clear Media, and then on the Twitter and Facebook for Hobby Hotline. That is all we have for this week's episode. Thank you all for listening. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on the stream. Everyone, we will see you back here next week.